Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute since I've recorded anything at all. I think I've taken like 5 months off. Maybe by the time this posts, it'll be like 6 months. But I did have my baby, and her name is Rose, and she was born on April 24th, 2024, which is a pretty cool birthday if you ask me. 4/24 at 2024, I mean, it's a pretty good number, I must say. But so yeah, she's here. She's about 4.5 months now. And she's doing really well. She's, very chubby, very cute, and yeah, things are going well. But I thought I would start off by sharing my birth story. I always really enjoyed watching birth stories when I was pregnant, and maybe it'll be entertaining or useful in some way to one of you. So yeah, this is my birth story. And the way I'm going to structure it, I'm going to talk about the things I did before labor, like when I was pregnant, and then obviously the entire birth. So to start off, I wanted to share like my mindset and my goals for the birth. So while I was pregnant, I learned about hypnobirthing, and hypnobirthing is a birthing technique that focuses less on like medical intervention and clinical medicine and more on like holistic techniques and breathing, things like breathing, and it's more like mindset based rather than like medication based. And I don't know why, but I got it in my head that I really wanted to try to give birth medication free, like epidural free. And hypnobirthing is like super supportive of that, and it teaches you kind of like the science behind birth and like what it means when you have contractions, what your uterus is doing during childbirth, and how you can cope with the pain, and kind of how to shift your mindset to get through labor medication free. So, in order to learn more about hypnobirthing, I read a couple books. I read Practical Ways to Make Your Birth Better by Siobhan Miller. I read Ina May's book, I believe it's called Guide to Childbirth. And I took also Siobhan Miller's online hypnobirthing course, which I took along with my husband, so he was also involved. And along with that, Siobhan recommends that you do like certain relaxation techniques and things like light touch massage and meditation, things like that, while you're pregnant. So I started doing that, I would say like around the midway point of my pregnancy. And Joseph would do light touch massages almost every night for me, which is basically just like, it's not a massage, it's more just like touching and getting your mind ready for childbirth so that when the time comes, you're relaxed and the oxytocin flows, and it's not such a stressful event. So that's what I was doing. I also started doing perineal massages from 34 weeks. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, I wanted to avoid tearing as much as possible, so I decided to do perineum massages as well. And along with that, I also did yoga, pregnancy yoga a lot. I meditated a lot. I watched a lot of positive birth videos. So in the UK, there's an app called Squeezy. I think the NHS develops it, but it's basically like a pelvic floor exercise app, and it reminds you a couple times a day to do pelvic floor exercises. So I was doing that as well. I think mostly in the third trimester, I was doing that. And I was also practicing my breathing techniques. So I would inhale for 3 or 4 seconds and exhale for 8 seconds, and I would do that like 10 times. And I would do that at least like once a day, just to, because like that's basically what you're supposed to do during contractions during labor. So it's just like to train your mind and body to get used to like breathing and relaxing and stuff like that. So I did a lot to prepare for labor, I gotta say. Things I did not do: I did not eat any dates, I did not do raspberry tea leaf, I did not do curb walking or any of that. But yeah, I did a lot of other things. So now on to the labor. So leading up to the labor, I actually would say like my pre-labor symptoms started from like 37 weeks. I was having like prodromal or false labor contractions for like 3 weeks every single day leading up to my actual birth. And they would come anywhere from like every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, sometimes every 8 minutes, 5 minutes. for a couple hours, and then I would start doing something or I'd go to sleep and they'd die off. So they never really built into like active labor contractions, but I did experience kind of like mild pain, like mild cramping pain, um, for several weeks leading up to the labor. I thought they were like contractions because they didn't feel like Braxton Hicks, which Braxton Hicks is just like when your stomach tightens and it's not really painful, but these were like more painful. So I was like, oh, this is probably labor pain. But now that I actually know what labor pain feels like, it was not that intense. So yeah, I was like, but I was really hopeful that, you know, my body was preparing for labor and maybe I was like dilating a little bit with all the false labor. Uh, that wasn't necessarily the case. But anyway, so yeah, I had that, and then at 40 weeks, I saw my midwife, and she gave me a membrane sweep, or she tried, but my cervix was like completely closed, and it was high up still. I think that's the terminology she used. So I don't know if it was successful, but she did try to give me membrane sweep. That was on a Monday, and then the next day on a Tuesday, I started having contractions from like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. every 10 minutes or so. But you know, I was like, okay, it's just another day of like false labor. I went to sleep around 2 a.m. And they were coming still, not like super regularly, but they were still coming, and I would like wake up every time I had them. And I had to kind of like breathe through them and talk myself through them. And I had certain like mantras that I would repeat to myself, like every contraction gets you closer to your baby, you can do anything for 1 minute, that kind of thing. So I was kind of like coaching myself that way. And then around 6:30, I got up because I couldn't really sleep anymore. I had breakfast, and then I dozed off again around 9 a.m. And then at 11 a.m. I woke up, I went to the bathroom, and I had bloody show, which is when like your mucus plug separates from your cervix. And it was super stringy and weird, and I was not expecting it to be so long, like TMI, but it was like a very, very stringy substance. It was wild. And I was like, okay, there's bloody show, which means labor is probably imminent at this point. And then the contractions were still coming and they were quite painful. And I decided to go for a walk with Joseph just to see if that could speed things up. So we went out for a walk around 3, and I had to stop every time I contracted, and I had to like squeeze, like hold on to Joseph and just like breathe through them as much as possible. And we walked for maybe like 30 minutes. And then when I got home, they were coming pretty regularly at that point, like once every 5 minutes or something. So as soon as I got to like 3 contractions in 10 minutes regularly, I called the hospital and I was like, I think I'm in active labor. Should I come in? And I told them about my bloody show. And they were like, okay, you can come in. And so we left the flat maybe around like 5:30. Got to the hospital at 6. And as I was walking to the labor ward or the maternity unit, my water broke. I wanted to give birth in the birth center because of the whole hypnobirthing thing, no epidural, all natural, thingamajig. I wanted a water birth, you know, all of that. So I was scheduled to go to the birth center. So we walk into the birth center, the midwife greets us, and I tell her that my water broke. And she was like, okay, show me your pad. So I go to the bathroom, take out my pad, show it to her. And she's like, oh, there's a little bit of yellow tinge in this. I think your baby has pooed, which is called meconium. So when your baby poos inside your uterus, it could be just that it's normal because the baby was 40 weeks. So once the baby is to term, I think it's normal for them to poo, but it could also be a sign of distress. And there's no way to know which one it is. So at that point, they were like, okay, you can't give birth here. You have to go up to the labor ward because we have to continuously monitor you to make sure the baby is okay. So that kind of was crushing. I was like really disappointed because I was dreaming of having a birth center birth. I really wanted to be like relaxed and peaceful, and you know, I had a vision for my birth, and it was immediately crushed upon arrival. So I was pretty sad about that. But I kind of had to accept it. And yeah, so she also checked my cervix at the birth center, and I was a whopping 1 centimeter dilated. Yeah. After weeks and weeks of false labor contractions and a whole day of contractions, I was 1 centimeter dilated. So that was also great. I was so happy about that. We went up to the labor ward and they hooked me up. They put like bands around your stomach to monitor your contractions and the baby's heart rate. So I was kind of like tied to a machine in that way. And I was like, you know, swaying, breathing through the contractions, trying to find a comfortable place and failing. And the doctors came in. There was like a whole bunch of doctors. I mean, it wasn't all doctors. It was like maybe 2 doctors and like a bunch of nurses and student doctors as well who came in and told me, you know, the situation. Basically, they told me that because of the meconium, I would have to, like, they had to make sure that my labor progressed kind of consistently. Otherwise, they would have to induce me. And they also offered a C-section if I wanted it. I told them I didn't want a C-section. I definitely was going to try my best to avoid induction as well because I knew that induction is quite painful and I was already in like a lot of pain. And they also like gave me an ultrasound just to check that the baby was head down, which she was. It was kind of hard to like talk to them because I was like in labor and it was very painful. And at that point, I think once my water broke, the contractions got a lot quicker and a lot more intense because your water kind of provides a buffer, and once it's gone, I think the contractions get a lot more intense. One thing that's interesting about UK and US differences is in the US we say our water broke, but in the UK you say your waters broke, like with an S. It's very subtle, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Anyway, so, and I also was like throwing up quite a bit because I think it was just so painful. I was like puking and they gave me they gave me anti-sickness medication. And even after that, I threw up once, but eventually I stopped throwing up. Anyway, that was a really random thing that happened. I wasn't expecting. I never knew people threw up in labor, so that was a surprise to me. And they offered gas and air to me, but I didn't want to do it too soon just because like I was like, if I do gas and air now, then I'm gonna have no other like coping mechanism, like pain relief mechanisms other than epidural. So I didn't want to do it for too early. I mean, I know there's other things like they can give you, I forget, like some sort of like fentanyl type of pain relief too. I wasn't really that interested in that though. So I also had my TENS machine on. I had been using the TENS machine actually the whole day from like the time I took a walk with Joseph earlier that day. Eventually, I think a couple hours later, I did use the gas and air, which I don't know if it did anything for me. Like it did not relieve me of any pain, I will say. It does make you quite like woozy and like airy. So I think like between contractions, it kind of distracts you until the next one and then like the pain comes. But like it does make your brain a bit more foggy, I would say. So like maybe you're a little bit out of it, but I wouldn't say it's like a pain relief. I would say maybe it helps like breathing because you do have to like breathe and then like release and breathe and release. So maybe it does help you to like make sure you're breathing consistently. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was like, I didn't love the gas and air. At 11 p.m., which was like 4 hours after the first cervical check, they checked me again and I was 2 centimeters. I was 2 centimeters after 4 hours of intense vomit-inducing labor. I was 2 centimeters dilated, which was very depressing. And I was in a lot of pain. So I was like, okay, if I've dilated 1 centimeter in 4 hours, that means that I have to dilate another 8 hours. And if it's 1 centimeter every 4 hours, then that means I'm in labor for like another day and a half. I mean, there was no way to know how long the labor would actually be, but that was my logic. And I was like, okay, I cannot do this for another like 36 hours. I am going to do the epidural. And Joseph was like, no, Anna, you said in your birth plan, you told me that if you ask for epidural to tell you no, because that is not what you want. But I was like, Joseph, you don't understand this pain. You don't get it. Like, I know I said that, but I'm taking it back. Like, I need that epidural. I told the midwife, she called the anesthesiologist, which in the UK, the anesthesiologist is not the anesthesiologist, it's the anesthesia? Wait, how do you say it? Anesthetist. Yes. another very subtle, very random difference between American and UK English. But anyway, so the anesthesiologist came in, she did her thing. Joseph nearly passed out because the needle was like very big, and apparently she was like rummaging around in my back quite intensely. So yeah, he nearly passed out. And he also had not been eating at this point. He hadn't eaten since lunch, and it was like 11, it was probably like midnight at this point. So I think he also needed fuel. But anyway, so eventually the epidural went in, and they also put a catheter in when you have the epidural because you can't feel below your waist or below, yeah, I think it's below your waist. The catheter was quite uncomfortable. And I will say, like, even with the epidural, I could still feel, like, I could still feel my legs. And they never felt heavy. Like, the midwife kept asking me, like, okay, do your legs feel heavy? And I was like, no. I was still, like, very, like, mobile, and I could feel things. Like, I would say the labor contractions felt more like early labor contractions rather than active labor, because it does kind of, like, dull the sharpness of the pain quite a bit. But my legs were still very much like intact and not numb. But it was weird. Like, I kept feeling like I needed to pee at every contraction. I don't know if it was the catheter, but like it was just weird. Like, I kept feeling like I needed to pee. And it was kind of uncomfortable. I would manage to sleep-ish. Like, I managed to rest a bit, and Joseph was able to sleep, but the epidural does fade. Like, you need to up the dosage every, few hours. So they told me that, like, as you start to feel it fade, to press a button and it'll up the dosage. And I was trying to up the dosage, but the button, like, you press a button to do it, and it wasn't doing anything. Like, slowly, I kept feeling more and more pain, and I would, like, press the button to make sure that it was working, but it didn't seem to be working. And the midwife checked too, and it just, like, wasn't working properly because the pain was just, like, creeping back up. And the midwife called the anesthesiologist to see if she could come in and check it and redo it if needed. But she was really busy with other patients. There was only one anesthesiologist for the whole maternity ward, so she couldn't come to fix it for me. And then I just kept getting, like, more and more desperate and more like, oh my god, it's coming back, like, no, because I did not want to feel that pain again. But there was really nothing anybody could do. Like, it was coming back, and yeah, the anesthesiologist never came. So eventually I felt everything again. So at like 3 a.m. ish, I felt more and more pressure in my pelvic area. I told the midwife, I was like, okay, I feel more pressure, I feel like I need to push. And she was like, okay, I'll check you. So she did another cervical check, and I was expecting her to say, like, okay, like 4 centimeters, maybe 5 centimeters. But she said I was 9 centimeters. And I was like, oh my god. I was so happy. I was like crying, literally crying tears of joy. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. I don't know how I progressed that quickly in, like, 4 hours. So I was just like so happy. And then a few minutes later, I was at 10, so I could start pushing. And the pushing was so difficult. Like, I don't know why I thought it would just come naturally to me. Like, okay, just pretend like you're pooping, you breathe really heavily, and it comes out. But it's not that simple. Like, it was so hard. And like, I tried so many different positions. I had a midwife coaching me. She was so funny. She was like a Irish lady who had these, like, really funny phrases. I don't know, she was just funny. And she was, like, coaching me through it. She had me on my feet, she had me on my knees, she had me sideways. I was, like, pulling a towel at one point while the other midwife was, like, pulling it her way, so it was, like, counter force. I tried everything. And, we would just keep trying, like, rotating through the positions. And it was not easy. And there were some contractions where I was just, like, pushing on my own and no one was really coaching me, and I was just like, I don't know if what I'm doing is effective. Like, I was just doing things. I don't know. It was really strange and hard. And yeah, it just made me realize how physical childbirth is, because I consider myself quite fit. Like, I ran through my pregnancy, and I lift weights and stuff, And for me, I was like out of breath. I was sweating profusely. Like I was tired. And I was just like, I can't imagine doing this. Like, how do people do this when they're not fit? You know, it must be so, so, so difficult. So yeah, I was just like, it kind of surprised me how tired I felt because like, I thought I was relatively fit. Yeah, I was pushing for a while. Rose would like come close to getting her head out, but then get like sucked back in at the end of the contraction, and that would happen like a few times, which was kind of discouraging and yeah, not fun. But at one point they asked me to like reach down and feel her head because her head was right there, and it was crazy. Like it was so soft. It was so weird. I don't know why I was expecting like a hard surface because like a head, it's a skull, but no, it was like soft. It was very strange. Because of the meconium, they were like, okay, we want to get her out as soon as possible. So the doctor came in and recommended that I do a ventouse delivery, which is when they like put a suction cup on the baby's head and then kind of like suction them out. Which you can also do like a forceps delivery, but I think because her head was so close to coming out, they didn't need to do a forceps. I think forceps is like when they use like a tong, and then I think it's more when the baby's further back. But so they did a ventouse delivery. They also gave me an episiotomy because my perineum was too tight. Even though I did all those perineal massages, apparently I was not effective in that because it was, yeah, it did nothing. I still had to get an episiotomy. So keep that in mind, okay? The perineal massages, at least in my case, don't always work. I agreed to it. I was just like, you know what? I've been pushing for a while. I'm tired. Let's just get this over with. But in hindsight, like I thought 45 minutes was a long time, but I'm hearing other birth stories now, and apparently I don't think 45 minutes is that long. Like I've heard people pushing for like hours and hours and hours. So in hindsight, maybe I should have pushed back a little bit more. I did ask them to like give me a few more tries. And after those like few more tries, I still hadn't given birth to Rose. So at that point they did do the ventouse delivery, but I kind of wish I had pushed back a little bit more. But yeah. Anyway, I was just happy to like get her out because it was a lot of work. So yeah, once I did the ventouse, she was out within minutes. It was very strange. Like once her head was out and then the rest of her body kind of like slithered out like a snake. It was bizarre. It was like really, it was just weird. Like, like the, I don't know, it was weird. And yeah, I'll never forget that like slithery feeling. And they also injected me with something to help the placenta. I think it was oxytocin. I don't know. They injected you with something to help the placenta be delivered more quickly. Because I had actually bled quite a bit during the labor because I was progressing so quickly. And they didn't want me to like hemorrhage or have more blood loss. So they gave me medication to help the placenta be delivered quickly. That was easy. I mean, it just came right out. Like I didn't feel anything really. After she was out of me, the doctors had to check on her because of the meconium again. So a pediatrician was checking on her and just making sure she was breathing okay and everything, and she was totally fine. They like cleaned her off, gave her to Joseph. Oh yeah, Joseph also cut the placenta. I'm not he cut the umbilical cord, which was cool. And yeah, he was like cuddling her for a bit, and then they gave her to me and we did like skin to skin. I offered her my breast and she immediately took it. She just like latched straight on, no problems. I was like, okay, I guess it's gonna be that easy. I was expecting some, struggle, but there was no struggle. It was very simple. So that was great. And yeah, we just had some cuddle time for a while. We tried to get breakfast, and the only vegan thing they could offer me was a chili. So my breakfast was bean chili, which was very interesting. Not bad, but not what I was expecting to have as my first meal postpartum. And yeah, so she was born at 5:37 a.m. on April 24th, 2024. And she was very little. She was just under 6 pounds. And she was very swollen and very wrinkly. And yeah, my first thought when she came out of me was just like, wow, I cannot believe you were inside me this whole time. Like an actual human with 10 fingers and 10 toes and head and arms and legs and everything. Like I just could not believe it because for some reason in my mind, like the whole pregnancy, I just could not believe that there was a human inside me. And I was fully expecting to give birth to like an alien. Like I don't know why, I just couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that I was gonna give birth to a human. So when she actually came out and she was a proper person, I was like, wow, like I did that. It's a human, and I made her along with Joseph. She was very chill, not really crying too much, not very fussy, just sleeping, looking around at things. So we were in the delivery room for a while, and then we got transferred around noon to like more like a holding bay area with other families, and we were only there for like a couple hours. And we had Subway sandwiches, which were mediocre. Called my parents, and then we got transferred to the birth center to chill, which was great because we had our own private room with an ensuite bathroom, and we ordered delivery for dinner, and it was just great. And we could have stayed overnight that first night at the birth center room, but we opted to just go home because, you know, Rose was fine, and I just wanted to get home and like be in my own bed. In hindsight, it was like a bit rushed, I guess, because we could have stayed there one night, but I don't know. I just didn't feel the need to stay there. And also, there was going to be a midwife team visiting us the next day anyway to check on us. So I didn't really see the big difference. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, the whole childbirth thing. It was way, way, way more intense than I could have ever expected. I would say it was overall positive, but of course, it did not go exactly to plan. Nothing, no childbirth ever does, I feel. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this birth story. And let me know if you guys have any questions for me. Maybe I can do like a follow-up video. And thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.